So why would Stalin consider a separate peace deal with Hitler in 1943? Well, by that stage in the war, Stalin had formed the conviction that his Western allies, Britain and America, were dragging their feet over the opening of a second front in Europe in the hope that Germany and Russia would destroy each other. He wasn't inclined to give them that satisfaction, so he was considering other options. Now, this opened up a whole new line of inquiry for me because up until that point, I had just accepted June 6, 1944 as a given. I had no idea there were any controversies or debate around the timing and location of the Second Front. So I started to look into the issue to find out if Stalin's suspicions were correct. And what I quickly discovered is that no one could accuse America of dragging its feet over opening a second front in Europe. From early 1942 onwards, American planners had formed the conviction that landing somewhere in northwestern Europe, close to the Ruhr and on the edge of the North European plain, offered the best means of achieving victory in the West. They'd campaigned for this strategy throughout 1942 and 1943 and made sure it happened in 1944. Churchill, however, was more circumspect. In fact, he was hostile to this proposal. What he favoured in its place was an ongoing Mediterranean strategy, one that focused on the Balkans, Greece, Italy, etc. So I began to look into possible reasons for this, and they weren't difficult to discover. Basically, the Mediterranean, especially the eastern part close to Suez, was Britain's fast route to empire and the oil of the Middle East. This region had been a British lake throughout Churchill's life, and he was determined it would stay that way. He favoured operations in the Mediterranean as means of enhancing and maintaining Britain's influence and prestige in the area. So his preference for Mediterranean operations had nothing to do with defeating Hitler, particularly if you look at the location and the distance between the Eastern Mediterranean and the Ruhr. Mediterranean operations had nothing to do with defeating Hitler and everything to do with upholding the British Empire and quick access to oil. So basically, having come across this interpretation, I decided that the only way to see if it stood up to scrutiny was to research and write a major book on it, and that's how Empire First came about. It was motivated by the desire to see if that interpretation of Churchill's conduct stood up to scrutiny and detailed examination, and I believe that it did. After spending the best part of 2 decades on and off writing Empire First, I firmly believe that Churchill prioritised narrow British oil and empire interests over operations in northwestern Europe to liberate that region from Nazi control. That therefore raises questions about Churchill's reputation as a champion of liberty and democracy, and it also strikes at a core part of Britain's self-image. Now, I realise that might be quite a difficult concept for some people to take on, so I'd offer two things. Firstly, it's always good to question our deepest held beliefs and to challenge received wisdom. New evidence comes to light, new ideas, new insights come to the surface. And if we just accept everything on the basis of faith and never question ourselves, then we're not really exercising our critical faculties. So it's always good to try and think differently. And secondly, there is no such thing as a final, definitive last word on any historical subject. We are all building on each other's interpretations, insights, and analyses. So if you dispute my findings, if you disagree with me, that's perfectly fine. That's all part of the historical process. I would strongly urge you to either write a better book or let me know where you think I've gone wrong. And if you can do so on the basis of superior analysis and presentation of plausible evidence, then I'll do my best to take your views on board. So I'd like to thank you for watching this video and for taking some interest in my work. And if you buy a copy of Empire First, I hope you find it enjoyable and stimulating. Take care and all the best.